Roll.
Yes. Representative Alleman,
Present.
Representative Angelos. Here. Representative Haroldson,
Here.
Representative Pendergraft,
Here.
Representative Sherwood.
Here.
Representative Smith,
Excused.
Chairman Bear.
Here.
Mr. Vice Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And before us today, first off, we're going to be doing House Bill 150, the Wyoming Business Council Evaluation and Reform. And with that, I'll turn it over to the good Rep. Geringer to give us a bit of an explanation on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity today to present to you. I think we've all heard those concerns over the course of especially the last year, but even prior to that, serious concerns about the programs and the use of funds with the Wyoming Business Council. The questions are of the nature of, are the expenditures a proper use of taxpayer dollars? Are the programs they manage something that government really should take a role in? Is the return on investment something that we would expect out of an agency like this? Are they providing the kinds of metrics that would show benefit to our economic diversity? Really, this bill is not about a defense of the status quo. It's a look at a potential structured transformation to evaluate and reform economic development and learn from those past successes and failures. And so really what this bill does to start out with is to add 2 members of the legislature ex officio to the board to push pause and look at having no expansion over the next year, but also taking a look at requiring them to report on grants and loans, contracts, programs, and return on investment in an expedited nature. And one of the things I discussed during this week with some folks is, should we do a forensic fiscal audit? And in talking with the agency, I understand that they do have audits. I'm not sure if it's of the nature that some folks are thinking, but they have audits that have been occurring over the last number of years. It would create in this bill, it would create a task force with members of the legislature appointed by leadership, include the Business Council Board, leaders in business, manufacturing, ag, oil, gas, or minerals, local economic development, city, county, and really work on what should be the function, operation, and strategy of the Wyoming Business Council and recommend potential legislation. And again, in additional discussions and looking at the action of what the Senate did yesterday, there's also the discussion of whether or not that should be a task force or whether it should be assigned to a legislative committee. So really, I'd be happy to answer questions. I'll just keep this brief. We all have our opinions on what's going on, and I'm sure there's plenty of people to testify on this, but really this is an attempt to respond directly to legislative concerns, but not have that potentially damaging program collapse. If the Business Council needs to be restructured, we have an opportunity to do that. If it needs to be wound down and moved into other agencies, that's certainly something that could be explored. But it also avoids maybe a leadership vacuum in economic development. Let's pause, take a breath a little bit, and really look to provide some continuity for communities and business. And so with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Geringer. Questions from the committee? Start out with Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Geringer, thank you for being here, and thank you for this bill. And this is a pretty measured approach. It's pretty clear what we've seen so far since this session started. The upper chamber doesn't want to go full bore and eliminate the agency, which, you know, that's something that must be taken into account. So I appreciate your presenting an opportunity to take a measured approach and spread this out over time and make a a good decision. Just wanted to say, I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you very much. Other members? Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to the good bringer of the bill, if you could give us your thoughts on, pros and cons on task force versus home committee versus legislative committee, and just your thoughts on the pros and cons of either option. Thank you.
Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for the question. The idea of bringing it forward as a task force was something to include a number of stakeholders across all levels of government and industry, and to bring them into a collaborative approach. Given that this is really a legislative directive, I can see the potential for bringing it into just a legislative committee that still includes all of those stakeholders. That way it is more legislatively driven. As to whether which approach I would prefer, as long as we include stakeholders, I'm not sure that I really have a preference as to which approach to take. If it's in committee, there's been discussions over it being in minerals, business, economic development. There's also been discussion about it being a subcommittee of that. I at one point offered management audit, but I understand with some of the other workload that they're going to be taking on this year, that may not be the best committee for it. What I would encourage is that there is plenty of time dedicated, no matter what committee it's in, or if the task force. I would encourage that there's plenty of time dedicated to it, because this is very complex. As we saw just in a bill that looked at repealing the business council, how thick that was, all the references to statute, and in discussions with the business council board, with the agency, this is a pretty far-reaching department that really has, or agency that really touches a lot of things. And so I think we need to have plenty of time, no matter which direction we go, to fully vet this out.
Other questions? Not seeing any. I do have a question. Representative, thank you for coming. Looking at fiscal note, we're $135,000. You got $20,000 for LSO salary. We got $40,000 for governor's office and $75,000 for LSO office and securing expert and consulting services. Did they have a window of time, number of meetings? Did like any of that conversation come up? Because I feel a little bit, and at the bottom, they kind of have this, well, we're not quite sure what it's going to cost. And so have we, when you brought this forward, did you give them a number of meetings you were anticipating? Because I do agree with you, this is going to take a substantial amount of conversation as we go through and see what this looks like and how this looks moving forward. So could you just kind of speak on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm looking for the reference specifically in here, but I believe we anticipated 3 meetings. Yes. No, that's not the reference I was looking for. I believe it was based on 3 meetings, and Mr. Chairman, I'll have to get back to you. I'm quickly looking through here. I'm not seeing where the reference is, but yeah, it was anticipated to have 3 meetings over the course between the delivery of the report April 30th and or the analysis by the Business Council April 30th, and the final report being due by October 1st. It was anticipated at least 3 meetings for that.
Thank you, Representative, for that. And then I guess the next question that I would have is, currently there's no funding in this bill for the council, and currently in the budget there's no funding for the council. Talk to me a little bit about what you're anticipating that looking like, because as it is right now, it's a shell. The shell's still there, but the funding isn't there. And we're saying, hey, let's push pause. Let's look to see what needs to be done. Let's really truly kind of fetter this out to be, what is the business council doing? What should it be doing? What do we want it to look like moving forward? but I don't, there's no financial vehicle in this place at this point. And so, talk to me a little bit about what that looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the question. And this would definitely have to work hand in hand with whatever we determine in the budget would work. When I'm talking about pushing pause, I'm looking at the potential of 1 year of funding for the Business Council with the ability to come back if we decide that the agency should move forward. Then in the next supplemental, look at providing funding for that. Really looking at no expansion of existing programs and keeping it in line with what they're doing now. There's obviously plenty of programs that and applications that need to continue or the projects that need to continue with the current funding. And so should we have no funding for that agency, obviously there is no point to doing this. And so perhaps there should be an amendment that says if there is no funding, then this no longer applies. Or on the converse, if we want to put some level of funding in here. But the idea was to have this working side by side with the budget process.
Thank you. Any other questions for the representative? Yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. Thank you for this bill. On the fiscal note, it kind of sums things up, and it says this bill contains an appropriation of $75,000 for securing expert and consulting services. I'm curious what defines that.
Thank you, Representative, through you, Mr. Chairman. The idea behind that was to have an outside facilitator that would help in the process. I've been through some of those kinds of processes in private business where having an outside look at or the ability to have somebody that helps in the process, making sure that we cover all of the bases. I didn't want this necessarily to be primarily an agency-driven approach. And given the loads and the expectation on everybody that would be on this committee to have that outside consultant seemed like a good thing to have in this process.
Yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the outside part, I get, that's kind of implied in securing consulting services. What I'm trying to get to is how do you define an expert? Who is a consultant? What kind of background would they have? That's kind of the area that I'm trying to get to.
Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would be up to the determination, I believe, of the legislators that are involved in this process. So we're talking about leadership appointing, if it stays as a task force, leadership appointing members to be on the task force, and those members would be looking for that consultant. The consultant, in my mind, is somebody that is experienced in facilitating business strategy, if you will. And an expert can be defined in any number of ways. It's really up to, I believe, the folks that are involved in this process to determine whether that's the kind of expert that would be needed in this case.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Representative. Others that would like to opine, do we have any reps in the room? Any other reps? I'm not seeing any. Agencies, come on up. Thank you, Mr. Durrell.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Josh Durrell. I'm the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. Thank you all for seeing this bill today. I really appreciate the the representative for bringing this bill forward. I think in his remarks, he mentioned that there's a lot of questions about the agency and about its effectiveness and about the role that it plays in the state. And I love that there are questions about it. I think in this committee in particular, we've had a lot of questions, and I really appreciate it. I know that that can be sometimes contentious, and it can be sometimes we may be at odds, but I think that that's where the best results come from, is from a deep dive into an understanding of what the agency does, what it can do, and what it should do. And I think this bill does that. I think it takes a hard look at it in the right way, and it brings the right stakeholders together. We're really excited about this. I think the attention that it will provide to not just the agency, which is secondary, but really to the challenge that our economy faces, in my mind, it's a wish granted to have this level of attention and this much scrutiny over what we not only do, but I think bringing people together to show what we can do and what we should do for the state. Again, it's a pretty exciting bill for us. If I were to sort of like continue to talk a little bit about economic development, I think you heard yesterday from Senator Lummis about the path that certain companies can take, and there was a company mentioned in her speech that started out as research at the University of Wyoming. And that research was just that. It was just research. And then a young entrepreneur said, "Hey, I'm going to take this research and do something with it." And along the way, our entrepreneurs face challenges, just like they do in other places, but they're acute in Wyoming because of our scale and size. And I think being able to play a role in the success of that organization and what they can mean to the future of the state, I think it's a good model for what can happen out of a task force like this, because what we'll be able to do is really hone in and say, okay, that was how it worked for that organization and maybe others that are like it, but how do we make it better? And how do we bring in more voices? And you're going to hear from a number of voices today sitting behind me, and they're experts in their field. They're people who not just have expertise, but they have experience working in the communities and working hard to make them business ready and make them so that businesses can thrive, and ultimately Wyomingites have the opportunity to stay in Wyoming and thrive in Wyoming as a family. And I think that's really what we want to do, is how do we provide the policy that's necessary to do that? How do we provide the investment mechanisms, whether that be loans, maybe it's grants, but what those things need to be in order to facilitate our economy. Over the last 5 to 6 years in particular, our non-resource GDP has sort of gone through the roof. It looks like a hockey stick. And by most metrics of business, that would be a good thing. Right? Like that would be a really good thing. I think if you look at counties, if you compare counties who have engaged in an active role in economic development, and you're going to hear from some of them today, you're going to see that has made a difference in their workforce. That has made a difference in their opportunities for families. That has made a difference in their output as an economy. And unfortunately, if you look at those that maybe have chosen not to, you're going to see the opposite. And what I want to do is allow Wyoming's tide to rise and lift all of our counties up. And I think that you're going to see again from folks in the audience today testifying before you, there's a lot of talent in Wyoming around economic development. And I think a task force like this is going to bring that to bear. And we hope and are excited about the opportunity. And we will be watching this bill closely, let's say. And I'm happy to stand for any questions that the committee might have as you contemplate this bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Durrell. Yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would begin by commending you for doing what you believe is right. I know that you work hard. I know that you have a vision, and we may not share that vision, but I recognize when somebody is out trying to do something. And I do commend you for that. You said something very interesting in your testimony just now. You used the phrase facilitate our economy. And I would ask you just to elaborate on that a little bit. And then I do have one other question. Thank you.
Mr. Drill.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, good question. So one of the things that we seek to do is we seek to understand at what points is our economy falling short and how do we remain competitive versus not just other states, but with other countries in fact. And so one of the things that we have to identify is where those challenges or chicken and egg problems occur. And so when I say facilitate our economy, it really means how do we understand where the choke points are or the breakdowns are in our economy so that we can open it up. I'll give you an example here in this great county that we sit in today. There is a challenge with housing. And while housing can be a hot button topic, one of the things that we know is that housing affects workforce. And workforce affects businesses, and businesses affect communities, and therefore we care. And one of the things we noticed is that the regulatory regime that was intact here was actually slowing the growth of housing. It wasn't a funding issue; those still exist, but the mayor has spent quite a bit of time working on the regulatory environment. That is an area that we have been helping with. I see that as a critical role in reducing regulation as a way to unlock our economy. So when I say facilitate our economy, I mean, how do I and my agency understand the policy implication, the investment mechanisms necessary to unlock the economy so that it can compete? That's simply what I meant.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. So this organization has been labeled a quasi-governmental, which means you play by a different set of rules. And I would like you to spend just a little bit of time and tell us what the benefits are of that, maybe a couple of the exceptions that provide you the freedom to do what you believe you need to do. And then also if you could flip that over, and what are the drawbacks to that?
Mr. Drill.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, thanks for asking that. I love this question. The economy is esoteric, but we are maybe even more esoteric. And because of our quasi status, we get to enjoy certain things, but we also have some drawbacks, as you mentioned. I'm going to mention two things that I think are really important about allowing us to run like a business. And I think we were set up early on so that we would have the ability to work on problems that were maybe politically challenging to work on. So we have a board of directors structure that the governor sits on as a non-voting co-chair, and our board of directors is represented by 13 business leaders and folks who understand the economy across our state. And those folks help us stay close to the ground, understand what's going on, but they also provide a little bit of protection, if you will, from the political ups and downs that may occur from the political process. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to focus on what's important, not necessarily what's just urgent. And it allows us to focus on what our economy needs and maybe not what it wants. And that's not to say that it would only happen the other way in a purely political appointment, but it allows for that shielding and allows for that protection for continuity. And it allows for our team to make some hard decisions that maybe otherwise wouldn't. I think we've seen that in the course of our time over the last few years. We've said no to a number of projects, a greater number than ever before in our history. We did that because of the strength of our board. And we did that. And in most cases, the folks who make the final decision, the State Loan and Investment Board, the 5 electeds at the state level, they agreed with our board. But in some cases, we suggested that maybe the project that was before them wasn't what our money should be funding. And they took a different approach to it. And so I think that sort of balance of, if balance of power is the right term, I don't know, but that shielding allows us to do work that maybe otherwise wouldn't be done. The other thing that is really interesting for our agency is the way our employees are categorized. Our employees are at will, which is different than other state agencies. And that gives us the flexibility and autonomy and to act as if we were a business in Wyoming. So we can make personnel decisions in a much more expedient fashion. But that doesn't necessarily we yield that, or we wield that in a negative way. What I think it does is it allows us to, again, balance that governmental agency yet business approach and use it for the best. And so those two things are in my mind good. Now, some folks might say at will status is a negative thing. I just don't believe it is. As somebody who's come from the private industry, I think it's something that's important. But the other part about being a quasi agency, and the second part of your question is a really good one. One, it's harder for folks to understand, and we do sort of stick out a little bit like a sore thumb, and so people sort of say, oh, well, they're different. That must be that could be seen as bad. The other thing that it does is it doesn't allow us maybe or afford us as much interaction with the legislature as is necessary. And I think what we're seeing today is a result of that. And I think I think this bill brings forth that and maybe a potential solution to that, at least in the short run, to solve some of that. But I think that's a challenge that I think we need to look at and we need to rectify it. And so I think those demonstrate some of the good and some of the bad of being a quasi agency.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to keep moving. So do you have a question, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your leave, I'd like to ask some short questions, one-word answers. May I?
Sounds great. Yes, Mr.
Thank
Chairman, why don't you do that?
There will be a series of them. So, Mr. Durrell, how long have you been in the public sector? And if you have had some time in the private sector, how long?
Mr. Drill.
Mr. Chairman, so I graduated from college in 1998 and I worked in the private sector until 2020. I have been in the public sector since 2020 in this role.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So you've been in the private sector, you've been both in the private and the public sector. When you make statements like we seek to understand, you had several years to kind of understand economies. And then when you say the economy is esoteric, you know that I disagree with you. The economy is not esoteric. The economy is built upon the businesses that produce, that provide services. And I think that word business is even in the name, the title of your organization. For a reason. I think it's a good reason. So when we come to that and we look at reorganizing or rethinking the Wyoming Business Council, and that's going to happen over this summer, it looks like, either in a task force or in a committee. I'd like to know, have you ever read Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics?
Mr. Drill.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Have you ever read Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom?
Mr. Drill.
Mr. Chairman, not in its entirety.
Okay. I'm going to ask that you read those two books before we get into this, whether you're working with committees or whether you're working with a task force, because you need to understand our perspective. We're looking at the things that make America great have to do with freedom, a free economy, capitalism. And so you need to have our perspective to be able to work with us to come out with a good solution. So I'm going to ask that you read those two books before we go into this measure. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Drill. So,
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the time today, and thank you for the suggestion on the reading. Appreciate it.
Okay, others that would like to testify on this bill, because I think there's going to be a number. Why don't we just fill the seats up and we'll start on the west side coming towards the east side. And I would ask that you would give us your name and if you represent an agency or a business entity, just kind of give us a little information of who you are. And we will start with the gentleman all the way down on the west end.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'm bringing this lively group up here to do an introduction.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I first want to start by saying my name is Ashley Harpstreet and I'm wearing two hats. I'm here, of course, on the behalf of Wyoming Association of Municipalities and also in my role as the administrator of Wyoming Association or Economic Development Association, now housed under the WAM umbrella to strengthen coordination between municipal and local economic development efforts across the state. I also want to give a shout out to Representative Angelos. You guys should turn around, it's snowing. So just to lighten the mood for a second, we were pretty excited looking behind you. So thank you for that prayer. Over the past several weeks, we have actively gathered feedback from both memberships on the programs and tools provided by the Wyoming Business Council as the main recipients and users of the programming are in both core memberships. The perspectives I'm sharing today reflect what we've heard directly from communities, local economic developers, and practitioners on the ground in every corner of Wyoming. As you consider the future of the Wyoming Business Council and the broader structure of the state's economic development system, we ask that several guiding principles remain at the center of this conversation. Ground level economic involvement from communities and local economic developers and businesses are key. Any statewide economic development strategy must start with the people doing the work on the ground. Cities, towns, and local economic development organizations are the ones coordinating projects, working with the businesses, and are navigating the real world constraints. A new structure will only succeed if it's built with local partners and not around them. Second, consistent, predictable policy. I sent you off today the building blocks of economic development, and you'll see the baseline is leadership. Economic development cannot thrive in an environment of uncertainty. Businesses, investors, and communities need stability, clear roles, reliable processes, and continuity across administrations and policy. If the state chooses to rebuild the Business Council, the new framework must provide long-term certainty, not shifting priorities every few years. Next, infrastructure dollars that make communities opportunity ready. No program, no matter how well designed, can substitute for the basics. Water and sewer capacity. You'll hear me talking to your committee a lot about that. Service land, transportation access, housing, and utilities. If the state wants measurable economic outcomes, the new system must prioritize flexible community-level infrastructure investment that allows local governments to meet businesses' needs today and prepare for growth tomorrow. Also, metrics that drive strategy, not the other way around. A modern economic development system must be grounded in data. Metrics should guide investment decisions, measure outcomes, and ensure accountability. Communities need a partner that evaluates successes based on real-world impact, jobs created, businesses retained, housing built, and infrastructure improved. Finally, a realistic timeline that aligns with elections and leadership transitions. As I shared in the email outlining the building blocks of economic development, leadership is the baseline. Nothing else stands without it. If the state is going to dismantle and rebuild its economic development structure, timing becomes absolutely critical. Wyoming is heading into a period of significant leadership transitions at the state, local, and organizational levels. Local governments, economic developers, and businesses need a transition plan that respects those realities, avoids disruption, and ensures continuity of service. A rushed overhaul risks creating gaps in leadership, stalling projects already underway, and weakening the very foundation of communities that rely to attract and retain businesses. These considerations are not abstract. They reflect the daily realities of Wyoming's communities. If the legislature chooses to reform the Business Council, we urge you to build a system that strengthens local capacity, supports infrastructure, and provides a stable pro-business environment with policies that Wyoming needs to compete. In closing, I am joined by two outstanding leaders in this work. WIDA Legislative Chair and CEO Cheyenne Leeds Betsy Hale, and WIDA member Brad Enzi, and CEO and President of the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance. I also gathered some more friends. I have Rusty Bell from Gillette, who's doing economic development on the ground level. Devin, that is doing airport work in Rock Springs, and Dr. Joe Schaefer, that's our workforce leader from Laramie County Community College. All of these people before you have been deeply engaged in economic development strategy for their communities, their regions, and our state. As you hear from well-resourced, well-organized communities today, I urge you not to lose sight of the smaller towns, the places where small business truly means big business, and where capacity is limited, but the need is great. The feedback we've gathered shows clearly that many communities are struggling to keep pace and are asking for help. They want alignment with a state strategy that supports them, not one that leaves them behind. Together, WAM and WIDA stand united in our commitment to strengthening Wyoming's economic future. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Harpstreet. So as we talk about this and we move forward, because of the number of people we have online and the number of people we have in the room, we're going to try to do about a 2-minute time limit. But we definitely do want everyone to be heard today. And so what we'll do is this, who would like to go first?
I think just go down the line if that's okay, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I promise not to ask any more questions, but I do want to ask Ms. Harpstreet a question.
Okay. Representative Bear.
Thank you. Ms. Harpstreet, you brought up the best point of all about this. You talked about leadership, and that's really what's necessary to create. And I think it has to be a vision that is cast that can go well beyond any elected official's term in office. So I guess my question is, have you ever read Jim Collins' Good to Great?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear, or Co-Chairman Bear, yes, I have.
Thank you for that. Just for the audience and the public, this is a case study that was done on many very successful businesses. And the outcome really was that it takes humble leadership to do that. People who are willing to create something that is bigger than themselves. And I hope that all of us that again are involved with economic development for the state of Wyoming will search for that leader that will cast that kind of vision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. So now we'll start down on the end, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Rusty Bell, CEO of Energy Capital Economic Development. Just wanted to give a couple examples of the partnership. We're blessed with minerals in Campbell County. We've done a lot of things with minerals. We've also done a lot of things for the state for minerals. And so we also have an incredible relationship with Wyoming Business Council and others to get things done in Campbell County. A couple examples, the infrastructure dollars that have come back to Campbell County are really important. The Southern Industrial Complex, which hosts LeBaire, Wyoming Machinery, Cyclone Drilling, and about 24 other commercial and industrial businesses. That water expansion was at Wyoming Business Council grant. I think those things are absolutely critical to continue. But really, firsthand experience for me, I am working on 3 larger projects. All have been leads from the Wyoming Business Council. That statewide leadership and that distribution of those leads to the local entities needs to continue. That if that stops, I think that's a real problem to not have a statewide organization that gets those leads and promotes Wyoming at not only nationally but internationally. Just before Christmas, we had an RFI come in from the Wyoming Business Council. It's really in our wheelhouse. It's mineral processing. We do that better than anywhere else in the world. Large project, a lot of work, a lot of jobs. We submitted 6 sites and very good sites and good companies in those sites. We also answered a lot of follow-up questions on those sites right before Christmas. And then the end of January, before site selection and site was going to happen, we got a call from Wyoming Business Council saying that the site selector asked if we were still open. Are we still open for business? And certainly the sites that I've put out there, the companies that we put out there, yes, we're open for business. We have to be careful on the messaging we're sending. We have to be careful on how that leadership works. And we need to continue to have these things move forward in some fashion. And I understand, we all understand there needs to be some changes, but we need to continue this important work with, for the communities, for the state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Any questions for Mr. Bell? Seeing none. Mrs. Hill?
Good morning, Chairman Haroldson and Chairman Bear and members of the House Appropriations Committee. My name is Betsy Hale and I'm the CEO of Cheyenne Leads. In my capacity today, I'm also the legislative chair for the Wyoming Economic Development Association. So some of my comments will be related to Leads and some will be related to our association. One of the things we found over the last 40 years in economic development here in Cheyenne and actually throughout Wyoming is it takes a grassroots bottoms-up approach. And so when you look at this wonderful building blocks, there really needs to be community vision. And I appreciate your comments about humble servant leadership, because in this world, as an economic developer, you do have to be a servant leader because there really probably is no direct benefit of what we do. So that grass up, bottoms roots approach is critical. The other piece that we find from our members and that I found here in Cheyenne is it really is a team sport, and there needs to be participation from nonprofits, from the private sector, from philanthropic groups, from each level of government, city, county, and state. And I'd like to share an example with you of how we built infrastructure in Cheyenne clear back in 2005 as partners. We were working with Walmart to build the refrigerator freezer distribution center. My apologies for saying that company's name. But we were working with this large—
It's fine in committee.
Yeah, okay. We were working with this large employer, by the way, and we felt like we needed to look at all levels of resource. How do we put the tiramisu of financing together? And so Cheyenne Leads, of course, has been citizen-driven since 1986. And we held a progress and prosperity campaign. We went out into the community. The smallest donation was $20. The largest donation was $100,000 over 5 years. That progress and prosperity campaign raised $2.6 million of philanthropic private money. Cheyenne Leads then took another $1 million out of our reserves. The county built a road for $500,000. The city of Cheyenne did a fifth penny for $1.5 million. And then we approached the Business Council for $3 million in a business-ready community grant. And so that's an example of where everyone coming together, I guess I call it stone soup economic development, really worked. And so, and again, infrastructure is the key. It really is the key. Sewer, water, roads, and fiber. You can drive to each one of our business parks and see that. I just also, in closing, want you to remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We've been doing this 40 years, so nothing happens overnight. And so I really do encourage you, consider the pause. There's nothing wrong with a reset. We've done it a couple times at Cheyenne Leads. We've had 3 CEOs. Each CEO has come in and reinvented the organization and kind of put their own flavor on it. And so I would like to let you know that Cheyenne Leads and we just support House Bill 150, and we encourage you to take this pause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Any questions for Mrs. Hill? Seeing none, moving on.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Enzi, the CEO of the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance. Thanks for having us today. I rise in support of House Bill 150. I think anytime in government we say, hey, there's a shift, let's take a look at it. And that's your authority as an appropriations committee to take those shifts and look at those things. I want to start my comments with economic development on a state-to-state basis is a brass knuckles competitive sport. Every other state, when this happens, said, I got a couple calls from North Dakota, one from Colorado, and they said, this is great news because we're going to start beating your butts. Fine. And it's just competitive. But I think the real important thing is, where does that stamp lie is the question we have to have. When we say from Wyoming, this is where the stamp lies for our state. This is where our economic development is generated from. It's not about people, it's about the policies and the place that that's located within our government. Then I think to Good to Great and also your economics books, it's really taking a look at the fundamental core of how you want to approach that. And so at a local level, I really look at it as, what tools do we have? How do we access those tools, and what's the time frame that those tools will be available? We've had a lot of success in Laramie partnering with the council on projects. And that comes from knowing what the programs are going to be over time. Lastly, I'll say, is it perfect? No. Are we ever going to get it perfect? Probably not. But is it our obligation as leaders in the state to continually try to obtain perfection? Absolutely. I think one of the things that I would say is, what are the metric that we're looking for from like the legislative body? Because I know internally to the council, they have metrics that they're working for. But I think creating some bridge in that connection to what's the metric that we're looking for. And that's why I encourage the pause, the reset, whatever we're calling it. But this deep dive this year into how we're approaching economic development in the state so that we can have, what does a win look like? I'm an athlete, have been my whole life. Well, I'm not very much of one anymore, but my whole life and coaching kids over the course of the last 30 years, the score matters. And so how do we know what the rules of the game are and what we're playing to? If we can't agree on that, we're going to never have a very successful outcome. With that, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. And was it Mr. Enzi?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Enzi. Any questions for Mr. Enzi? Seeing none, Mr. Schaefer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Joe Schaefer. One of the things I love about Wyoming is the opportunity that it provides. Most of you know me in my capacity in my day job, working for one of the great community colleges within the state. I also serve on the Wyoming Business Council, currently as the secretary. I'm a past chairman and a board member of Cheyenne Leads, and I see Mr. Steenbergen in the back. I'm also on the board of the Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce, and I consider that involvement to be an opportunity and really a privilege to be part of creating a state, a community, if you will, that hopefully opens the door for opportunity for individuals and opportunity for businesses. I prefer and believe that there is a role for us to create an environment where opportunity can happen. I would rather not sit on the sidelines and engage in that. And so one of the reasons why I really support individually and personally this bill specifically, and would commend the folks bringing this, including Representative Geringer, is it does two things. One, it says there are good things happening right now. There are programs and things that are supporting Wyoming businesses and Wyoming communities. Let's let those keep kicking along. Well, we do the second big thing, and Chairman Bear, I think to your point is we've got to have a good debate about what our vision is collectively and ultimately for the state's role in creating an environment where economic opportunity can occur. That could be less involvement, more involvement, but I think what's important and what I appreciate about the dialogue thus far is that it's engaged us in the civil discourse to actually dig in and say, so what is that role? Let's figure it out. Let's find a way to come to at least some alignment, find that common ground, and then cast that vision so that we can work together instead of feeling what it might feel like to some that we're working at odds. I think we all want the same thing, and that's a state that creates opportunity for the people that choose to live here, the businesses that choose to do business here, and those individuals that want to fall asleep under these wonderful big skies. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Any questions for Mr. Schaefer? Seeing none.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and rest of the committee. My name is Devin Brubaker. I'm the airport director for the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport in Rock Springs, currently president of the Wyoming Airports Coalition, amongst several other economic development hats in my community. Today, just briefly, Wyoming airports generate or support $3.5 billion of economic activity in the state. We can't do that alone, though. We do that with partnerships. We do that with relationships. And there's many that I could sit here and speak about, but in my mind, there's very few that are bigger than the Wyoming business. It isn't always just a grant or a BRC program. While those programs are critical at our airport in Rock Springs, over the last 2 decades, we have secured $14 million from the Wyoming Business Council BRC program, $9 million in grants, and $5 million in loans. That has helped us grow our annual economic impact from $20 million a year to $59 million a year, and also leverage over $37 million of other funding. And I got to tell you, I apply for a lot of grants. The most recent terminal project that we wrapped up in Sweetwater County had over 24 different grants on that project. And by far, the Business Council was the hardest grant to secure. It was not easy. And I have applied for several Business Council grants. And I have been put on the spot by this guy right here and by the CEO of the Business Council and staff members, and they don't make it easy. I can tell you, I have done it. It is not a simple process. What I can tell you is it's so much more than the BRC program, though. I've had the opportunity to serve on our URA for Rock Springs. I've also served as the chair of our County Economic Development Board for 8 years, recently resigned from that position. I've served on Travel and Tourism Board for the last 8 years as well in our community. And every one of those entities works with the Business Council to build local capacity. And whether it's a grant, which I've already spoke about, or it's programs like Assessments to Action, where the Business Council staff comes out into our community, helps us understand a problem, evaluate that problem, and develop a pathway for solutions to those problems. And Mr. Chairman, just lastly, most recently, I had the opportunity to, and I'm still serving on this task force, where we're looking at our large load electrical customers in Southwest Wyoming. I can imagine that you all know who they are, our soda ash industry, the state's largest export. And so that industry is constrained with electrical demand. They need more electric. You've seen bills this session, unfortunately, they've passed or have failed. But our task force is looking at unique and other opportunities to support that industry and support new industries coming into our community. And we had the opportunity just 2.5 weeks ago for Business Council to come out into our community, sit in a room with us, and go through an analysis to identify the problem. It seems simple. What's the problem? But the solution is always hard. We know, you all know that, all the different problems that you're trying to solve for our great state, the solution is never easy. And oftentimes we try to take a big bite. And sometimes we need to realize as humans, we got to take smaller bites so we can tackle these problems. And they came into our community in a 9-hour window. They sat in a room with us and they worked a problem. And for those of you that have done this before, they went through a fishbone analysis with us. They went through a plan to really identify the core issue that we could actually move the needle on. And then I'm pleased to say that we're moving that needle just 2.5 weeks later, thanks to the support of the Business Council. So while we support grants, while we support the loans, because we need critical infrastructure in our communities, the Business Council is so much more than the grants and the loans. And I hope as this committee moves forward, the legislature moves forward, task force move forward, whatever is going to happen on the next step, we keep in mind that it's so much more than just writing checks. So with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With 59 million more in economic activity, how long will it take you until your economic activity pays for your agency? And I would preface that with the first question was, does your airport receive additional funding grants? I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, kind of a loaded question. Every airport in the country receives grants. We all are allocated funding from user-based fees from the Federal Aviation Administration for core infrastructure at our airports. 37 of the 40 public use airports in Wyoming are not self-sustaining, meaning that their local cities, towns, or counties provide funding to cover their operations. As you could expect, aviation, I know you know this, Representative Pendergraft, we are a heavily regulated industry with a lot of unfunded mandates from our friends at the federal government. And so we do receive funding support, but at $59.3 million a year of economic activity that my airport, our airport in Sweetwater County supports, and we take in about $400,000 from our city and county each year. So the ROI is quite significant for that economic impact. I don't know if I've addressed your question, Representative, but happy to follow up with you either here or outside of the meeting as well.
Follow up? No? Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today and your testimony. You mentioned a fishbone. for those listening at home, they're like, what the heck is he talking about? I want to give you some opportunity to clarify what that process is and just recognize that my community has gone through that as well. That very deep dive analysis of, what are the barriers to growth? What are the problems? And it's not about money. It's about facilitation. It's about getting community members in the room, sitting down and having that really thoughtful dialogue about what's not working and how do we move beyond that. So maybe just a shout out and a clarification again of what that process looks like, and encouraging other community members who might be listening to reach out to their regional and take advantage of this workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Sherwood. I hope that I do not do a disservice to the great staff that helps facilitate this in our communities, because I am far from an expert. But I've been through a multiple fishbone analysis alongside the Business Council now. And what it does is it allows a community or an entity or an organization or an individual, for that matter, to identify what a core problem statement is, and then what are all of the different contributing factors. And on a dry erase board, it legitimately looks like a fishbone analysis or a fishbone. So you take your core problem statement and then you start identifying every single item that contributes to that problem, whether you're talking about housing or electrical supply or air service or whatever the problem is for your community. And what was interesting 2.5 weeks ago when we went through this analysis, we all went in with what we thought was the problem and what we thought the solution was. And when we left 9.5 hours later, we had a completely different problem statement. We had dozens, if not hundreds, of contributing factors to that. And we also came out with 3 potential solutions that we could work simultaneously, concurrently together and try to navigate and split up into teams and tackle each of those problems and each of those solutions. And as you do this problem, it allows you to take a smaller bite at the apple, because what it does is the big problems, whether it's housing or workforce or whatever it is, those are so monumental, it's really difficult to know how to tackle that one thing. But if you break it down to go, hey, we have a water line issue, or we have a land availability issue. And then you break down that land availability issue. Is it federal ownership? Is it private ownership? What is that problem? And when you get through that process, you're then able to start saying, what can I actually do? How can I move the needle on the small, tiny component of this bigger problem? And then once you get that momentum from that one small component, you can go on to the next one, and you just build momentum as you work through that fishbone until ultimately you get to the point where you have solved that larger problem.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you guys so much for your testimony. Others in the room that would like to testify? Let's fill the seats back up. Remember to give your name and who you're with. And
well, I'm new to this. My name is Bruce Pivot. I'm with the Business Council, but I'm also a businessman in Sweetwater County. I've been associated with the Business Council for about 15 months now, and I'm just learning just like everyone else, to let you know. I do support the House bill that you are looking at, but I want to tell you a little bit of a background of why I feel that this is very important. I am a University of Wyoming graduate, and I've worked in the coal industry. I've worked in the trona industry. And for the last 28 years, I've worked in my own business, which over the years I've had to change as a chameleon as the economy and everything has went south. What I mean by that is trona industry has went south, coal has went south, oil and gas has went south. We've had to change from being an engineering company to an automation company to an electrical contracting company. We've had to reinvent ourselves. And today I feel that Wyoming is behind the 8 ball. What I mean by that is that we're still kind of in the Stone Age when it comes to growing our economy. I've lived in the boom and bust, as I said, of the oil and gas and trona. We have loss of jobs today to China. China has one of the largest trona reserves in the world, and they are now producing. They are now exporting. And our trona industry is in the dumpers. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that. Coal, we know what's going on with coal. Our federal government decided that coal was bad, and that's going down. Oil and gas, we're getting more and more economical, and it's also cheap because there's an overabundance. So what I'm trying to say is in the 27 years of business that I've had to change, and yes, maybe our council needs to change a little too. We're ready for a reset if that's what we really think that we need to do, and maybe we do. But to grow our economy and facilitate our youth, we have to have a really good stake in growing our economy. We need to innovate Wyoming, and the Business Council is the vehicle to grow and expand our economy. And that's about all I have to say. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Questions? Yes. Representative Bear.
Breaking my promise already. So thank you for being here, sir. I really appreciate
Thank you, sir.
your testimony. And I think you're right on that we're way behind the 8 ball. But how did we get here? In your opinion, how did we get here?
Thank you for your question, Representative Bear. It's a good question. How do we get there? I think because we were short-sighted. I think that we thought that the oil and gas and the drone industry and the mineral industry would just take us into the next century. And it did, but now we have to look at another century. And I think that we have to look at with AI, and as Devin talked about power, one of our biggest constraints in the state of Wyoming is electricity. People do not understand that. The problem with this is the Pacific Corp has given all of our infrastructure away. Most of the energy that's coming out of Southwest Wyoming goes to the Pacific Northwest. We have no way to tap that. But on top of that, we do not have the infrastructure to tap it if we wanted to. Prime example, WeSoda wanted to build a new trona mine right there in Sweetwater County. Went to the local utility and says, hey, we need 28 megawatts of power. And they said, sorry, can't give it to you. We need to figure out, and I know that the task force is looking at, and I'm also in the middle of that also, of other ways to create more power, electricity in the state of Wyoming. It's not just in southwestern Wyoming, it's everywhere. But the Business Council can help with that. As Devin pointed out, they came in and helped us look at what we need to do to move there. I will give you an example right now that I've been working on for the last 10 years with one of the trona mines who actually extracts methane from their mine. They use about 16% of it in their process, and they vent 21 million cubic feet and flare it of natural gas a day. And I'd like to make a gas turbine out of that. There are infrastructure problems with that. I can tell you that Pacific Corp doesn't want us to do that, but if we can make that, it's strategically placed in Sweetwater County where we can help other companies grow. So I think if that's answered your question, but thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Thank you very much for your testimony, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is, I'm just not sure if it's working. Okay, there we go. My name is Lauren Hirschab. I'm the majority owner and CEO of Brunton International in Riverton. And in walking into this room, I noticed that there's a Brunton geological compass in the mural on the wall, and thought that was nice to see. If you haven't heard of Brunton, we are a very old company. We're about 130 years old, and Brunton has been in Riverton, Wyoming since 1972. So for the past 54 years, it's been a hub of a growing manufacturing community in central Wyoming and really all of Wyoming. We currently make compasses for geology, military, and outdoor recreation use. And all of our models are made in-house. Everything from design to manufacture to marketing and sales is done under one roof on the land of the Central Wyoming College in Riverton. I want to talk mainly about just some anecdotal support that we've received from the Business Council since my husband and I took over about 5 years ago. It's been nothing huge. We've sought support for event attendance. The STEP grants are small. You could call them micro loans or micro grants, just $5,000 to support a company like ours to go grow our market in other places. We've gone to Europe a few times, a key market for us, and we've gone to Australia. And in the past few years through those events, we've seen doubling of sales in those two regions. thanks to the ability to go to these events. Brunton's a tiny company. We have less than 30 people. Right now, we're about 25. And so every dollar matters. It's a tight playing field. It's a tough playing field out there for manufacturers like us. Even, with benefits of trying to bring things domestically, it is still very challenging and adds to, I think that the support we get from the Business Council helps level the playing field a little bit where every dollar matters. We've also received grants to go to domestic events. We started going to the SHOT Show again to be present again, and have gotten to have monetary support, but then also just this past year, we're part of the Wyoming block. We got to be present with several other small Wyoming businesses at the SHOT Show. And it not only builds that visibility, but the community of, hey, this is a block of Wyoming businesses that are representing at this enormous global event that we probably wouldn't otherwise have been able to afford to attend or to get such a premium spot on the floor. We also got to be part of a Wyoming block at the Modern Day Marine Expo. And that is also a chance to showcase what Wyoming small businesses have to offer for our military community. And in addition to these events, I've reached out to our regional representative with the Business Council. He's always a phone call away. I've sought advice. I've called him when issues arise, when things come up that I have no idea what to do. He's been sort of a sideline coach for me. And in general, the keeping business retention in Wyoming is just as important as business recruitment. Businesses like Brunton are established, but the only reason Brunton has existed in Riverton for 50 years is because of ongoing community support. The city, local, and state economic development agencies have been pivotal in keeping Brunton in Riverton. I don't know if it would still exist today if it weren't for Idea Inc. and for again, repeated community efforts to keep Brunton present. And I do hope that continues. It's nice to know that you have groups like the Business Council who have your back and are there, whether it's small or large requests. It's in a way, it's part of what makes Wyoming special, because people are just a phone call away or a visit away. And you have an advocate there to help at least point you in the right direction.
Thank you, Mrs. Hership.
Yes,
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Yes, Representative Pendergraph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm about to ask that rude question you never ask in polite society. Could you give us an idea of the size of your company gross revenues?
Sure. I don't like to share numbers. Let me say this. I think a lot of people, based on what Brunton used to be when we were full on optics, other luxury camping goods, Brunton has expanded and contracted many times through the years. We are now mainly compasses, mainly things with a magnetic needle inside. So we're a fraction of what we used to be. With that said, there are opportunities right now on my plate to potentially double or triple again. And I was about to reach out to the Business Council for at least counseling advice on potential loans and going that route. But this volatility is making it difficult to go that route.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Hership, for your testimony. Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Scott Meyer on behalf of the Wyoming Bankers Association, representing your Wyoming community banks. In my humble opinion, nothing drives economic development like deposits in a bank. And I have to tell you, I think it is the engine that drives economic development. And other than our prior speaker, you've heard a lot from nonprofits, but I want to dovetail a little bit off what the prior speaker said about for-profit entities like your banks. We're not talking just about economic development to bring new businesses in, but we want to make sure that we do everything to keep those businesses there, whether it's expanding or whether it is succession planning or anything like that. And that's where your community banks come involved. I would stand to tell you that we rise in support of this House Bill 150. And the reason why is that Wyoming banks don't just deal with the Wyoming Business Council. We deal very well with them in providing our loans to help develop economic development in all of our communities. We rely on the Wyoming Business Council to fund those things that regulations will not allow banks to finance. And I would go on further to say that this is how Wyoming banks actually work with economic development. It is so important for us. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Any questions from Mr. Myers? Seeing none, thank you guys for your testimony. Any other testimony in the room? Not seeing anyone jump up. Mrs. Childers, let's jump online. It looks like I have a Mr. Briggs. You want to admit Mr. Briggs into the room and we can have a conversation?
Okay.
Or whoever jumps up first.
Robert Briggs is coming on now.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Briggs, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today. My name is Robert Briggs from Sheridan, Wyoming. I'm the administrator for the Sheridan Economic and Educational Development Authority and have worked in local economic development since 2009. And Sheridan has definitely been a community that has benefited significantly from a partnership with the Wyoming Business Council and utilization of its programs. And some of the successes in the community include the Sheridan High-Tech Business Park, which is home to 3 light manufacturers, over 135,000 square feet of manufacturing space, and contributes approximately 300 primary jobs to the community. And we have phase 2 of that park underway right now. And I wanted to comment that, and share as others have, that the Wyoming Business Council programs and technical support are vital components in the local economic development toolbox, specifically to address economic diversification and resiliency. Sheridan's also a community that has benefited from the support outside of the grant and loan program, such as the Community Needs Assessment and the Assessment to Action program. The local economic development is critical. In order to be successful, any state economic development programs have to center on our communities and meet local needs. Sheridan's found that our greatest successes have come from being project ready, and for our community, being project ready has meant careful planning and development of targeted infrastructure. And so any funding that supports planned and targeted infrastructure development contributes powerfully to local economic development. I wanted to echo prior comments that any task force to reimagine the scope and programs of the Business Council must involve the voice and experience from Wyoming communities and the boots on the ground of those working in local economic development in their community. And finally, with the future and resiliency of our communities at stake, any reimagining of the Business Council must be measured, transparent, and intentional with adequate time to ensure success. And so with that, I offer support for House Bill 150. Thank you again for your time and consideration, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Briggs. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Mrs. Childers, who next do we have?
I have just promoted Justin Farley.
Mr. Farley. Welcome, Mr. Farley.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and committee, thank you for having me here today. My name is Justin Farley. I'm the CEO of Advanced Casper, which is the economic development arm for Natrona County. I will be brief this morning mostly because I've been sitting here drinking coffee waiting to talk. So I myself moved here in the 90s, mid to late 90s, to open a business in Wyoming. And I can tell you that in my time here that it's become apparent that it's difficult for Wyoming to grow organically, that it's imperative for us to recruit businesses and the people that come with those businesses to Wyoming. And relocating a business or opening a business here is a set of very complex decisions. And I can tell you any speed bump that you run into, whether it be political or regulatory, that speed bump will get those companies looking somewhere else. And we just can't afford to do that. We as Wyoming can't afford to have that unpredictability. So we stand in support of the House Bill 150 and hope that you would consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farley. Questions for Mr. Farley? Seeing none, good job. Excellent on your time and
Thank you.
yeah, best of luck to you. Okay,
Yes.
moving on.
Mr. Vice Chair, that is the end of the remote testimony. No others.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Childers. Last chance, any testimony? Not seeing any, we're gonna close public testimony and I will ask committee, what is your pleasure on this bill? We have a move by Chairman Bear and a second by Representative Angelos. With that, we're gonna go through the bill. Starting on page 1.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you. I have a proposed amendment for the committee to consider.
Okay.
I don't know that either option is better or worse. I
Okay.
hope that we would come to the same sort of outcomes. But thinking about the good work that this committee did over the interim with the state forester and sort of how we structured that idea started as a task force and then moved into an interim topic for this committee. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about the conversation that happened yesterday with the body down the hall and sort of how they finesse the 2 bills that are in play on their side. And so I'm bringing this as a consideration for the committee, an amendment that would conceptually delete the task force and move the work to a joint committee of JAC and joint minerals. So I'll walk you through the changes and then up for conversation, vote it up or down, deciding what you think is best. So on page 1, we would delete on line 2, creating a task force. So we would delete that. All of line 2 would be deleted up to line 3, in evaluating the Wyoming Business Council. So it would remove the task force from that first section of the bill. And then on page 3, we would delete lines 17 through 22. So that is the beginning of section 2. We would delete all of page 4 and 5. So again, that's the task force. And I want to pause here and say, we still want stakeholders. If we go this option, we still want stakeholder involvement. We want people to come when this joint committee would meet and provide us with their testimony and their feedback. Okay, so we're deleting page 5. On page 6, we're deleting lines 1 through 12. And then on line 13 on page 6, we are replacing that with a joint appropriations, joint minerals interim committee shall. And then we're still keeping everything in terms of what are our evaluation metrics. So moving on then to page 8. On line, so between, okay, pages 8 and 9, we're deleting the word task force and replacing it with joint committee. Page 9, line 5, sorry, I did this on the fly, so thank you guys for your patience here. So page 9, line 5, we would add the Wyoming Business Council Board of Directors so that they would receive the report and findings of the joint committee. We would delete on page 9, lines 9 through 12. We don't need to forward any proposed legislation to ourselves. So we just remove that language. And again, continuing on page 9 to replace the task force with joint committee language. On page 10, line 9, we would add joint appropriations so that it would list out joint appropriations, joint minerals, the governor, state budget department, Wyoming Energy Authority. So they're still getting all this information. On page 12, we're deleting lines 11 through 22. So that's the appropriation that would fund a task force. The funding for our committee work is already in the LSO budget. Line 13, we're deleting, or page 13, lines 1 through 14, we're also deleting that appropriation. And then this is for the committee to consider keeping that $75,000 to allow the joint committee to work with LSO to secure expert or consulting services for further evaluation. So this could be a preference here on whether we keep this appropriation or not on the bottom of page 13. Page 14, we would delete lines 5 and 7. We don't need to accept additional funds to get this work done. And then we would insert, just to offer clarity to our business community, we would insert the language on page 14 at line 8. Nothing in this act shall be construed to impair any existing contracts, agreements, or other obligations of the Wyoming Business Council executed before the effective date of this section.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Discussion on that motion, Representative Pendergraph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for this amendment, as I look through the task force concept on pages 4 and 5, and yes, we need input from those stakeholders. But if you look at my emails over the last probably 2 years, this leaves out some stakeholders that really need a voice. We've heard from the brass knuckle economic development people. We've heard from the Chamber of Commerce. We've heard from agencies. I got dozens of emails from people who had received monies in the form of grants and loans, and they were all in favor of this. Shocked. I also received literally dozens of emails from people who are independent free market capitalists who built their own business their own way. And I looked at the task force and I look at pages 4 and 5, and we've got the executive, in my view, kind of stacking the deck with appointing 8 of those people. And all the stakeholders that I see there, I can already tell you the direction they're going to want to go. What we need to do is find out how to invite and get the input from the other side of the fence and juxtapose those, and we all need to work together. So I really appreciate this amendment. I think it's more on the right track. It gives us the time to think about how do we invite the stakeholders that never received anything, nor did they ask for it, nor did they want anything. I want to hear from them too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would echo the comments of my vice chair, but I'd add another group. This is the group that I fell into, those people who saw value in the Wyoming Business Council, or at least their local economic development corporation, well enough to invest in that, like I did. But maybe have been a little disenchanted over time. I quit investing in it because I didn't see that entity doing what it should be doing. And obviously that was a snapshot in time, but there may be another group out there of successful business people that are kind of in the middle between those two groups. And we need to somehow identify them and get them involved with this effort. So thank you.
Any other comments? Just one question for the bringer of the amendment. As you're looking at a joint committee, what are you anticipating that looking like? So would we align minerals and appropes for our normal meetings to overlap each other, where we maybe do a day with all of us? Logistically, what does that look like? Do we have facilities that could do that? I'm getting the good chairman that's raising a hand.
I have a vision for this actually. And to get the kind of focus that we need, we did real well last year, as the good representative mentioned in her motion. But we're going to need to do more this time. Last year, we had 3 subjects and one committee. So this will be combining two committees. And I think we need to limit our work this summer to two subjects, this and one other. And I'm going to ask this committee to constrain ourselves as we think of all the things that we could do this summer and let this be our primary mission. I will talk to the good majority floor leader. He's the chairman of minerals on the House side. We'll obviously give our Senate counterparts an opportunity to pick a subject, but no more than one, so that we really are focused on this. And I'm going to ask the Minerals Joint Committee to do the same thing. This would be one subject and then one other for that committee. If we can maintain that kind of focus, then I think we can manage to find time to work together as a super committee, if you will, but then to come up with the kind of legislation that's going to lead to a good outcome. And it's just a matter of putting more minds together to come up with the right solution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Do you have anything that you wanted to add to that? Okay. Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say thank you to Representative Geringer for bringing this. I think this is kind of this is the direction that we need to go. And I also want to say, I know I've heard from people that they're concerned that maybe joint minerals is a heavy lift. They're a heavy lift anyways. And so to make sure that the Wyoming Business Council has the time it needs, I think it is important that it does reside here, because we can dedicate that time to. We've proven that this last summer with the time that we gave, and we had some heavy topics, but that would be my only concern with joint minerals. I can understand having, some meetings together, but we want to make sure that we get the proper time. So.
Any other? Okay. So before we vote, Mrs. Childers, if you could also just help us. Obviously, we think we got all the areas, but if we just give the latitude to our LSO staff, if they're like, well, you missed these 3 paragraphs that had that one word or something, we give you guys that latitude to do that if the good bringer of the amendment agrees. Okay.
That sounds good. Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I do have one question after.
Okay, Representative Bear.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the good bringer of the motion was going through her points, which I think were excellent, this written copy does not have pages 8 and 9. I just want to point that out.
Yep.
So just her comments were appropriate for pages 8 and 9. They're just in comments, not on the page.
Mrs. Childers.
Okay, I think I have everything except for the change on page 14. Insert a line 8. Nothing in this act shall be construed to impair any existing contracts. And then I don't have the rest of that sentence.
Mr. Chairman.
We can get you a copy of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. At this point, we're going to vote. All those in favor of the Sherwood amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That does pass. Thank you. Any other, because that pretty well covered all the pages all the way through. Is there any other amendments that we want to bring at this time? And I'm just going to open up document. Any other amendments to this bill? Any other discussion on this bill? Sensing the desire to vote, if you could please call roll on House Bill 150 as amended.
Roll call vote. House Bill 150 do pass as amended. Representative Alaman.
Aye.
Representative Angelos. Aye. Chairman Bear.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft.
Aye.
Representative Sherwood.
Aye.
Representative Smith voted aye via absentee, and Vice Chairman Haroldson.
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair, 7 aye. And I'm assuming that Representative Geringer will carry this on the floor.
That is correct. And Representative Geringer, if you want to get with Representative Sherwood, and so you have an understanding of what just happened to this bill. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming and testifying today. Truly appreciate you being part of this conversation and look forward to seeing where it goes in the future. At this time, we are going to do the re-referral of House Bill 120. Do we have anyone in the House that is here to bring us 120? We'll pause for just a second.
Okay. And Mr. Vice Chair, Representative Campbell was invited to this meeting.
Okay, and I am gonna ask this. We do have a meeting in order right now, guys, and I'm gonna ask you guys to back away and we are gonna continue our meeting. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So at this point, we do not have the good representative here that brought this bill. So before us, we have a series of fiscal notes on the Energy Production Reclassification and Sovereignty Act. There is a single sponsor on the bill, no co-sponsors, no Senate sponsors. So I would say this. Committee, what is your pleasure on this bill? Where are you guys at? Any discussion on this? And if yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Mr. Chairman, I've spent some time with Representative Campbell, and this is a pretty complex bill. It involves a substantial amount of money, and I think that we should lay this back until such time as he is able to present it to us.
Okay, we have a motion to lay this bill back. And we have a second. All those in favor of laying back House Bill 120, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? No. We will lay this back and we will lay this back to our next scheduled meeting. At which time, if Mrs. Childers, if you could again, just give him a heads up that it will be heard and request his presence for that.
I certainly will.
Thank you so much. And when is our next scheduled meeting?
Mr. Vice Chair, we haven't scheduled it yet because we don't have any bills. So,
okay.
Are you thinking?
Sure.
That's a good time to do it.
Okay.
So just so I'll repeat that. So we'll do tomorrow morning.
Hang on a sec. No, well, let's make it noon tomorrow because we're gonna be late tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Noon tomorrow.
Noon tomorrow.
Yep.
Thank you.
So noon tomorrow, we will have our next meeting, at which time we will hear House Bill 120.
Mr. Chairman.
Referral. Yes, Representative.
Just want to remind the committee, Thursday, we'll be doing third reading, and that is the last day to get something out of committee.
Okay.
Okay.
House bills out of committee.
We're doing fine and getting everything out. It just
Yep.
something, if we get inundated, which is a good possibility based on what we saw. Well, no, we're done.
No,
with
everything's been
introduction.
read in, so re-referrals are the only thing that we could possibly see.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
With that, I am going to dismiss this meeting. Thank you guys so much for your work today on House Bill 150.